Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining and welcome to the PitchSync Startup Series. I'm Stephen Flutie Davis, the founder of PitchSync, and I'll be your moderator today as we highlight the people who are not just talking about change in medtech, but who are actually building it. Our goal with this series is simple. It's to showcase high potential startups solving real world pain points and connect them with a room full of people who get it. So each company will have 10 minutes to pitch, followed by a 10-minute Q&A where we'll dig into the opportunity, the impact, and the road ahead. But before we kick things off, I want to thank and introduce our expert panelists for joining us today, leaders who bring a deep experience across innovation, clinical care, investment, and commercialization. So Dr. Jeff Cole, orthopedic surgeon and founder of Merge Medical, Matthew Ray Scott, the principal and managing director of Feed, the agency, and David Rosenween, the managing director of HS Squared. So they'll be weighing in during the Q&A and bringing valuable insights for their unique vantage points. And now next on to our presenters, OR Intelligence, an AI-powered surgical readiness software built by surgeons who lived the inefficiencies firsthand. PF Bank Corp, a physician-owned bank built by doctors for doctors. They're really flipping healthcare finance on its head. And now first up, Dr. Donegan.
Great. So thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Derek Donegan. I am one of the co-founders of OR Intelligence, as well as an associate professor and orthopedic traumatologist at the University of Pennsylvania. Today, I want to speak to you about leveraging technology to optimize surgical readiness, the OR Intelligence solution. So I show this because this is my day job. This is what I do. This is a 47-year-old polytraumatized patient who was involved in a motorcycle accident, came in with this very complex open distal femur fracture. He underwent staged treatment with a washout and an X-fix, and then was put on the docket for definitive fixation. This is what we did. We did a dual implant construct, regaining and retaining length-line rotation. We used a retrograde nail, distal femoral plating system, a femoral distractor, a large X-fix. The staff, we had a seasoned scrub tech, which was great. We had a scrub tech in training, which added some complexities to it. A radiation technologist was decent, was fair. But highlight in this case is during the case, the nail tray, so the part that goes inside the bone, was missing the targeting jig. And so I was unable to put the screws through the nail in a minimally invasive technique. So the sales consultant had to go grab an entire another set. Thankfully, we had one sterile in the hospital, and we didn't have another retrograde nail case on for the day. If not available, then I would have had to, quote unquote, MacGyver it, either done perfect circles to get the screws in or switch to a completely different system or vendor interop. And so, at this day and age, this is just something I should not have to worry about. So with that, the environment that I work in and most of us work in is, it's inadequate access to timely surgical information. There's an exploding number of surgical venues from ASCs popping up like every other corner. And there's a high turnover creating staff shortages, especially with traveling staff. And so I like to say the only consistency I have in my rooms every day is inconsistency. I would argue, and this is anecdotal, that it's 1 in 5 surgeries are missing something necessary that either needs to someone needs to get in the middle of the procedure, or we have to move on. Why? I mean, surgical equipment moves frequently between ASCs and hospitals. There's a lot to know. I liken this, 20 years ago, if you asked for a small frag plating system, you would get 1 or 2 vendors. Now you ask for that, there's probably about 10 or 12. There are systems, but a lot of them are ineffective, and that leads to delays, higher costs, and ultimately compromised care. So when we looked at this, we looked at, what kind of good scientists, what's our gap analysis? So gap 1 was the ability to select the right equipment. Gap 2 was access to mission critical information. Gap 3 was experience handling the equipment. And then gap 4 was the ability to record accurate data. Not to go too much off the path a little bit, but 2 days ago, I was in a meeting of how we're doing a cost savings program at our institution. They used my usage data. It was out of date. It was incorrect. So the data that they're using to make critical decisions is just wrong. And so, as we know, thousands of trays, 1,000 more combinations, which makes it complex. So the question we ask ourselves is, how do we ensure that surgical teams have the right trays, instruments, implants, and support to provide the optimal care? And that's where we came up with our mission, to create cutting-edge software that aligns surgical teams with the right information, equipment, and support to deliver the best possible surgical care. Because at the end of the day, That is why we as surgeons went into this, is to provide the best possible care that we can. OR Intelligence has three core technical competencies. First is data management taxonomies. It's a SaaS model software, and then it's all underlined with artificial intelligence and machine learning, which seems to be a big buzzword today, but we are actually doing it. And with that, we created a platform with three different offerings, which we'll get into. Smart Card 2.0, Rep Plus, and Sort. Smart Card 2.0 is our AI-enabled planning tool, and we have shown that this improves equipment accuracy. It streamlines communication at the time of booking. We call it time zero notification, where every stakeholder and process gets alerted to the case. And it provides machine learned preference card management. It flows into kind of this intuitive shopping cart that can be optimized for preferred users, has a scorecard methodology, and allows for real-time communication of all parties to facilitate case preparation. The best part is this the AI-enabled learning cards is actually the preference cards learn on the go. So as you add things to your preference cards, it can make those changes real time. This flows into what we call cart management, which is a case preparation and inventory management system, which gives full visibility into our OR logistics. It allows for real-time build status of case carts, the ability to recognize the information as well as the implants and instruments that are necessary, and more importantly, the ability to place alerts for missing items. I can't tell you how many times I have a case cart come up that's missing something that's critical for that case. That flows into the second part of our platform, which is Rep Plus. And this is, you can look at this as a virtual surgical assistant for real-time product support. We specifically named this Rep Plus because we look at this as enhancing the sales consultant's footprint and activity in the operating room. It provides as an education platform for new hires and enhances case coverage and allows for remote rep support in rural areas when that's needed. This is an AI-enabled interface with image recognition and natural language user interface. It can be done autonomously with voice interaction with the OR staff or remotely with an expert dialed into the case to guide the team through the case. It allows for instrument identification and location, usage instruction and problem solving, and allows for that virtual expert attendance. The last thing that it does is it allows for real-time implant and disposable usage tracking. We like to call that point of consumption data. It doesn't get any closer to the actual point of consumption of the use of that implant or instrument to identify and record that to hopefully prevent what I mentioned earlier of using data that's completely outdated. And then the last part of our platform is our computer vision. This is our surgical object recognition tool, or SORT. I follow this stuff because I'm interested into it, but at the AI summit this past year in 2025, Fifi Lee from Stanford was talking about the role of AI in healthcare, and she called out that surgical instrument tracking is the wave of the future, which we love seeing since we've been working on this for the past 6 years or so. And so, one of the big issues with computer vision is the ability to get enough training data. You need tens of thousands of images to do that. And that's kind of our secret sauce. We have solved that problem. And so what we have done is created the ability to create a 3D photorealistic synthetic world, if you will, of trays, instruments, and implants. These are all synthetic images of real trays that we put in our database in our library to reference and to use for our computer vision software. If you held this up to a real tray right next to it, you honestly would not be able to tell the difference. So what this is our AI-enabled computer vision that's can be run on a smart device. Our whole purpose with this was to provide a tool that would be useful, that everybody has in their hands to be able to use. Allows for real-time identification of implants and instruments. It has geolocation enablement, so we know where and when the picture is taken and how that is relayed. It turns anyone into an expert and allows anyone to check devices. My 6-year-old daughter can do this without a problem. All you need is a smart device, has synthetic self-generated training data and no large data set, so it's pretty well streamlined. This is what it typically looks like in a controlled fashion, but we know that in real life, nothing's controlled. So we taught it to pick up loose tool identification for occlusion and in that kind of chaotic world, if you will, that we actually live in. Multiple points of opportunities for computer vision in the chain of custody of instruments, from couriers dropping things off to OR staff to SPD and back through the chain. So these are some videos. These are real time. The video on the left is of a controlled set. As you can see, it's things are organized in the set. You have to take my word for it, but this is not sped up. This is real time. How long it actually takes our computer vision to apply the algorithms and tell you what's missing and what's in the set. And then, as I mentioned, it's nice that it's, controlled, non-chaotic, but we know that in life, in our world, that doesn't always exist. And so here you'll see more of a chaos model where we just randomly take instruments and implants out of a tray, drop them randomly together on a random background, which you could argue the lighting for this is not very good. And same thing, take a picture with the iPhone that you carry in your pocket, and it identifies what those instruments are in this amount of time. And then the last image on the right is just a simple screw counting mechanism. This is just unique because these are sub 4 millimeter screws, and obviously not optimal background, and it collects them and identifies them pretty quickly. We can do up to 1,000. And so in addition to that, we're able to do large bulk items. Instead of scanning these individually, we can take a picture of 80 to 100 and capture them right away, and send them as far as expiration dates, what the inventory looks like, and really enhances the audit ability as well. So basically what we built was an AI-enabled or workflow from end to end, really to clean up every phase of the process, drive ROI through smarter surgical logistics, and really trying to leverage both the benefits for hospital, ASC, as well as the surgeons, as well as the med device companies to help our patients. We're value parts for the hospital and ASCs, reducing delays, lower cost, and supporting surgical readiness, as well as the med device company with, multiplying rep productivity, reducing missed cases, and capturing some pretty granular insights as well. There's a large market here, as I'm sure everyone on this call is aware of, and even small parts of it can lead to significant revenue. Where we are now, we have multiple pilots wrapping up. We are generating revenue. We're in a commercialization launch phase. We have 9 patents granted both domestically and internationally. And this is my last slide. And the reason why I put this here is that, I feel like a lot of these offerings these days are from outsiders looking in, trying to solve problems that they think exist. This company and this solution was built by insiders working their way out for problems that we faced every day and continue to face every day. And so with that, I thank you, and I will take any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Right on time. Well done. Panelists?
Yeah, I'll go first. So, Dr. Donegan, this is a space that I know and love. Full disclosure, I'm on the board of XX, led by Dr. Robert Masson, and then I'm working with Dr. Charlie DeCook on kind of democratizing the concept of efficiency. And so you've got something here. You've got a real solution here in a growing market. And here's my recommendation. I thought about this because as soon as I went through your presentation, instead of asking you gotcha questions, can I just kind of just share with you what I think you should consider that I think would be most valuable to you? Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you've got separate product names. And what I've learned so I'm a branding guy, so I'm coming at this from a branding perspective. So you've got solutions which are smartly named. First of all, your parental brand name, great. It's a great name. And then your endorsed or subordinate names, Smart Card, Rep Plus, etc. Great. Having said that, I recommend that you develop what I would simply call a branded and proprietary category. The key is for you to create a new category within an existing problem or category. So like zero delay surgery platform. And if you can turn this into a protocol, perception-wise, within hospital systems, because you kind of have a data taxonomy, I guess. You've got vendors, you've got payers, you've got hospitals, etc. And as you know, they don't always play well together. So what I would recommend is that you develop this surgical readiness branded and proprietary protocol that actually quantifies what I would consider the cost of chaos. And not to be taken out of context, but the cost of chaos gets interesting for you because it's really going to win the CFO attention not just in workflow nods and not just in surgical preference. That's my feedback for you.
Thank you. I love cost of chaos.
Yeah, you've got to quantify it. So you can qualify it. You just have to have a latency index that quantifies it in terms that they understand. And they will.
Excellent. I have a question on the raise and where you're at on that. I don't know if we went over that.
No, so we're looking to bring on just about 250, 300,000 to kind of round things out right now, really to make enhancements on our existing software that's been requested by customers, as well as to continue to maintain our staff. We've had a couple decent sized contracts come through, but and that's where we're at.
Are you mostly hospital market or ASCs as well?
Yeah, so it's so it's interesting as I'm sure you can imagine, there's a couple different targets here. So Smart Card is a hospital and ASC target market. So we're in both for that. Rep Plus and computer vision has been primarily med device, and that's that's being utilized currently. And interesting enough, Rep Plus kind of balances both, like the med device uses it in the hospital.
Is there any data available to the surgeon point of care? For instance, you find you need to put a bone graft, and is there a way to get pricing information to make some decisions point of care?
Yeah, so the smart card's customizable in that regards with preferred pricing. And I didn't highlight this, but we have a green, yellow, red dot system that actually shows you the preferred vendor contract. It doesn't prevent you from using non-preferred, but say you pick something that's red, it'll pop up, say, hey, are you sure you want to use this? Kind of making the surgeon at least confirm and think about it. As we know, when we don't really know how much things cost, and when we do, we sometimes make decisions that are more cost effective.
I think what you shared was great, and I love the end-to-end solution, how you've sort of thought about it and designed it. Couple technical questions. How do your solutions interact with EMRs or other systems that are currently being used for scheduling SPD?
Yeah, so right now, so the quick answer is there's simple APIs to tie into them, right, to integrate versus embed. Currently, we don't do that. We actually are standalone, and in all the systems we're working in, the staff uses our system, and then in addition to either Cerner or Epic. So in smaller systems, we've been integrated in that way, but in the larger Epic and Cerners, we have not. As far as computer vision, inventory management, simple APIs into everyone has a different inventory, SMS system that's directly tied through an API.
And then in terms of the geolocation, I imagine the computer vision, does this, but are the tools and instruments, they have RFID chips, or how is that? Okay.
No, so we don't have any. This is like true AI computer vision. It's not OCR or RFID. It is based off of our library, synthetic library. It identifies the tool based on that. So it doesn't matter where it is. I could take the instrument home to my house, put it on my desk, take a picture of it, and it would identify it. And right now, just from a training model, like the big thing with that is that you need like tens of thousands of images. Our secret sauce and patent stuff is that we actually do it all through just CAD files. And so our training data is just through the CAD files from the device company. And we get to about 80-85% precision just with that. And then we test it with a few pictures, which bumps it up to about 90-95%. And then as it continues to be used, it just spins itself up.
And does the company have affiliation with Penn?
The only affiliation is me. We went through the legal stuff with them, and they returned the rights back to me about 2 years ago. So they just get 5% of what I personally make off of it and get free use of the commercial product. That was a fun conversation.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's one we're all going to try to question. David, I know we've talked about that a little bit over time. How do we get physicians back in the game if they're hospital employees?
Always the most complicated part. So it's good that you've worked that out, and it sounds like the agreement's reasonable. So that's good.
Good lawyers.
Excellent. So we're going to move over to great presentation. Thank you so much. We're going to move over to Marty and Dr. Tom Chambers. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for you, Marty, here. So just let me know when to move forward.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Marty Nichols. I'm one of the co-founders. My other co-founder, Tom Chambers, is present as well, too. You can move forward with the next slide. And what we represent is Physicians First Bank Corp. And what is PF Bank Corp? It is a bank holding company that allows for the investment of physicians across all geographies and all specialties to invest side by side with other investors and then move around the onerous regulations such as Stark, some of the AKL, and might even take us around the hospital moratorium and allow them to monetize the vast amount of capitals that physicians drive through our medical industry and through all of our industry. Next slide. So with that said, two of us are here. Currently, our founders there's three physician entrepreneurs and three industry people that have all been very successful. We're real close and maybe making an announcement in the next few weeks that we may have a full team of bankers and financial people joining our founders and joining our board as well. You can go to the next. We've surrounded ourselves as we've done this with some really strong advisors, Eide Bailly and the CPA firms, lawyers, physician groups such as Pelto to advise us on our way, Agent IQ to help us with customized software to enhance the banking and financial experience of all these things. Next slide. And then we've also created, interestingly enough, some partners. The focus of this first and the first acquisition we want to do is obviously as a bank or a financial institution. But along the way, there's been a lot of entities that have already recognized the value of being able to deal with physicians in an entity such as the holding company. We have contracts signed, and there's the reality is the holding company itself will be generate cash flowing in Q4 of this year, could very easily be cash flow positive by Q2 of next year, and that's without the revenues from the financial institutions added on top of this. Next slide. So some of the key things that we wanted to address is that banks just typically don't understand the average physician's practice and their needs for capital. This is evident from things like GE, Philips, and Siemens, some of the biggest providers of capital equipment within the medical industry. They all have GE Capital, Philips Capital, and Siemens Capital. And that's because banks will do certain loans for doctors, ones that they understand, but they don't understand physicians' businesses. Stark laws, anti-kickback laws, certificate of needs, moratoriums have all been stacked against doctors and don't allow them to play on a level field and monetize their capital. And they're experiencing extremely high overhead. Orthopedics is seeing 64% overhead while they're getting decrease in their income. So the majority of the revenue from the well-run groups now is coming from outside of patient interfacing. Next slide. So, a lot of people might think, how do you jump from a hospital to a bank? And it's not as great a leap as you might think. The stark reality of it is hospitals don't care about physicians and they don't care about their patients. What they care about is the revenue that the physicians and those patients drive through their hospital and the money that they make off of the script and the patient relationship and the hard work that the doctors do. And the same is true with banks. In a hospital world, the physician that drives the most revenue gets the most attention, but they don't get a share in the revenue. Banks are the same way. They like doctors because they have a vast amount of capital and loans that they push through their facilities, but they don't take the time to really understand their practices and their needs, much less allow them to share in the revenue. Next slide. So go ahead. You're going to have to do a bunch of clicks here for me. Stephen, go ahead and click, click, click for about 4 or 5 things. Let's just real quickly look at this. Is a typical move of a doctor doing a total hip arthroplasty to support this. Give me another couple clicks. And basically what happens is the physician sees a patient. They go through all the pre-authorization. They do all the work. They bring this patient to the hospital. They get their $1,264. The hospital will bill between $60,000 and $108,000 and then settle for an average of $39,000 and sometimes as much as $50,000. And the doctors don't get a share in any of that additional revenue, much less have control over how it gets done. Next slide, and you'll need to do a bunch of clicks again. So what they did was they learned how to do these procedures and they created the ambulatory surgery center. And what happens in the ambulatory surgery center is the physician still gets their $1,264. But because they're owners in it and they've got focus on it, they've been able to do these same procedures for around $15,000 to $16,000, driving better outcomes, better throughput, and there's enough capital left over that they get a share in the revenue of that. And private equity and hospitals are clamoring to buy these ASCs simply because they're so profitable. Next slide. We believe that that's because of the power of ownership and the power of focus. So once again, if we look at the same scenario on why a financial institution, $164,000 a year, with 64 or 60% overhead, that means that those physicians are depositing $1.2 million in an FDIC insured bank. If they're putting it in a checking account, many times they're paying a fee for parking that money in that bank. And at best, they're getting 3 to 3.5% in a money market or a savings account. Go ahead and give me a couple other clicks. And what the bank then does is they take that money, they'll take $1.2 million and they'll capitalize it with roughly 10%. And then they lend that money out at 6, 8, 10, 12% loans, many times right back to these same physicians. They're paying them 3% for their money and then charging them 12% to actually use that money. So next slide. If we take the proven model of the ambulatory surgery center and how it's worked, and we follow those same funds through a bank that has physician ownership in it as well, the same doctor is going to deposit the same $1.2 million. They're still going to pay the same fees. They're still going to get their interest on their savings account. But because they're an owner, they're going to share in the revenue and the capital and in essence be paying interest back to themselves. The other value of this and the good behavior is who's going to take a loan from a financial institution that they own and then not repay that loan or take out a bad loan. Go forward. That's one of the biggest risks of a bank today. So again, the power of ownership in this thing, next slide, is really a powerful piece in this whole deal. So the way that we've structured this is we're structured as a bank holding company. Everybody will invest in and be an owner in the holding company. We do that because that becomes the base for the foundation for all of the verticals and allows physicians to participate as well as the other investors that come along in those verticals and monetize the capital that they generate. We chose banking on the front end of it because this is a real simple thing, and you'll see some of the numbers that bank makes. But the first thing we'll do is we'll take the capital from investing in that holding company. We'll buy one of the targeted banks. We'll focus that bank on the physicians and their patients and their practices' needs. We'll provide a better service just like an ASC and allow them to monetize that capital that they're doing. Physicians are big into trust accounts. They're big into 401ks and IRAs. But more importantly, the average orthopedic surgeon employs 10 FTEs. The average family practice doctor employs 5.6 FTEs. They have to provide for all those people the need for IRAs and 401ks. Once again, why not monetize that and by owning it and providing a better service to your employees? This also opens the door. If you look at that and you have 600 physicians come along in the ride out of the 1 million physicians that are in the United States today, that leaves you a pool of 6,000 employees that currently these physicians are writing a check for $1,500 per employee per month for employee health services. That's $9 million a month that's getting deposited in somebody's bank and is being used to generate investments and other capital and providing really poor health insurance. We can go into the purest form of self-insurance. And by the way, right now, one of the most aggressive things in the physician market is almost all large groups. One of the first things they do is move into a self-insurance model. And again, we also believe that by investing in the holding company, one of the verticals that opens up is we could actually start to have physician-owned hospitals and skirt the moratorium. Next 3 slides, you can go ahead. We were talking about that as we were going. So we talked about the trust. We talked about the banking. Each of these are all the verticals that we can create, by having the holding company. Go ahead, next one. So if you look at a competitive analysis of this, what's interesting is since Tom and I started our journey, sometime in around 2018 and 2019, there became a plethora of these banks that saw what we were doing, or we believe saw what we were doing. And now what they've done is they've taken their community banks and they offer a private banking model inside of it. Banks such as BankMD, Panacea, BHG Medical, and Physicians Bank. And what they're more than happy to do is to have a few people that kind of know healthcare and focus on doctors and make money off of doctors. But we're the only one that's offering them equity position in that same financial institution along with a revenue share. Go ahead to the next slide. If we look at one of those entities that roughly in 2019, a small community bank just south of me in San Antonio, Texas, created a private bank within itself called BankMD. In 2019, they were a $232 million asseted bank. And by simply focusing 3 people on making money off of doctors, they grew in 1 year from $232 million to a $356 million asseted bank. What's really interesting is you then see the effect of COVID. And we're quite convinced that part of the reason that while other industries were going bankrupt, dropping out of business, businesses were foreclosing, it was a lot of the strength of the financial institutions and stuff behind that bank that really left them relatively neutral. They were still profitable all through those years. And then when the COVID opened up and elective surgeries and stuff came back to us along with that other business, you can see they continued that climb, and in literally 3 to 4 years have taken that $232 million asseted bank to $756 million, primarily on the strength of the value of physicians and the capital that they drive. Next slide. So if you look at it, the ASC revenue opportunity in and of itself is one of the fastest growing markets within the healthcare segment, and it represents $47 billion growing year over year in. Next slide. But this is the one that's probably most staggering to people. What most people don't realize is they look at physicians as individuals. And you look at the lowest paid individual physicians at around $260,000 per year. If you look at the average on specialties, it's around $368,000, with musculoskeletal or ortho being at about $556,000, and some of the cardiovascular being up in the higher $500,000 a year. We look at those as individual income bases, and we've divided them into those type of deals. But physician income alone, just of consolidating physician income, represents $377 billion annually in the United States alone. But we've divided them into these subgroups, and thus we can conquer them. But I'll do that later. Go. Next slide. So what we're wanting to do is we're looking now at the value of a community bank. And if you look at community banks, they're scattered all over the United States, and they represent roughly about $3.2 trillion in banking and in revenue right now. And they return 10 to 15% annually. That's not a bad investment just in and of itself in a small community bank. If we use the ambulatory surgery center model, just like leaving the hospital and going to a physician-owned, is no different than going from taking a small community bank and basically making it a private bank. And although they represent a smaller market cap, these banks are growing at returning 34 to 37%. That's the kind of power of the medical dollars and physician revenue. Next slide. And capital that they generate on this deal. So our timeline, you can go ahead and click right through these and stuff. We're a little bit behind on our timeline. We would like to have a soft close on our raise sometime in the next quarter. At that point in time, we would sign a letter of intent to purchase one of the target banks that we're purchasing. We would submit for regulatory approval that will take some time. At that point in time, we will continue with the capital raise to strengthen the base of this bank. We believe we'll be able to command about a 20% increase on that raise once we own the LOI, because now that you own the bank, there's a higher value to that stock. And if all goes well, we could be a little bit behind. We are subject to FDIC and some other regulatory deal, but our hopes will be to be operating a financial institution in Q1, Q2 of 2026. Next slide. And I won't spend hardly any time on this. This was something that we projected and put together before BankMD was even around and came in, and we projected that basically we would take one of the target banks that we looked at that was a $100 million financial institution, and in 5 years take them to $742 million as our estimates. And you can see that in our pro forma. BankMD proved that that could be done, and they did it within 3 years without even the value of physician ownership. So next slide. So disclaimer is all of these are forward-thinking thoughts. We're hopeful for this. We think some of this has been proved out, but none of this is real. This is all basically Tom, Marty, and our CPAs. Next slide. Financial assumptions are based on some pretty solid banking industry and some pretty solid numbers that are out there. Again, the BankMD kind of justifies this. We believe we'll take just the interest income of that small bank from $1.46 million in 2025 to $28 million in 2030. And again, that doesn't include any of the numbers from the other services that the holding company and stuff can provide. This is just purely in the bank side of this alone. Next slide. This is actually one of the target banks that we're looking at. Again, they're just slightly touched, but if we get this closed out and we sign the letter of intent in 2025, as with in all businesses, we believe there'll be a slight loss as we transition over. However, that bank is profitable now. As we ramp it and grow in year 2, we might see some losses. The financial guys that we're talking to that want to come in and partner with us on this believe that they can turn that into a positive, and we should be returning 18% on the ROE within 5 years, and that will do nothing but continue to escalate as we go forward from there. Next slide. Our ask in this and what we're trying to raise is a $60 million raise. We've now included a soft close at around 15 million or 20 million to sign that LOI to accelerate this thing through. 6 million shares authorized, currently at $10 a share. When we soft close at the 15 million, that valuation will be at $10 a share. And as I said, we believe very strongly that once we actually own a bank, that we can justify raising that by probably 20%, and we'll go to $12 to $13 per share. And then as we increase the value of the bank, at some point, accountants will come in and value that share as we close out the 60 million. One of the really nice things about a bank versus an ASC is, with an ASC, is if you build a 3-center suite in an ASC, you're limited. At some point in time, if you bring on more partners, you not only dilute the share price of your ASC, but there's a point where the ASC can no longer support it. There's a point where you'd have so many investors that you would actually dilute those doctors down because they wouldn't be able to have 2 rooms and have additional OR time. One of the real beautiful things about a bank is that it can grow out to no end. Of course, we'll dilute a little bit of the shareholders as you bring in new shareholders. The share value will come down. But the beautiful thing about it is that capitalization comes into the bank and becomes the money that you get to capitalize those deposits, and it can continue to grow. So every time somebody comes in, their investment alone is simply like adding another OR suite onto your OR, while you're just adding it into the ability for the bank to grow. Next slide. So why invest in this? Banking is just a good business. It's always been a good business. Doctors are some of banks' best customers. A reasonable community bank will turn 10 to 15% year over year, and we believe we can turn this into more of a private bank scenario of 18%. And again, this is just on the financial institution alone and doesn't include the value of bringing physicians together across all specialties, across all geographies, along with other people into a holding company that can open the door for all the other verticals and monetize the capitalization of physicians. So I hope I was able to squeeze that in 10 minutes.
Yes, close.
Go ahead and get the next slide if you would for me, Stephen. Just simply because there you've got a QR code and you got a little bit of information, and I'm wide open for questions, and Tom can more than happy to help me with the questions.
Yeah, I'll kick us off. Thank you. What I love about your brand story is you've got some built-in villains. Do you agree with that, Marty?
Yeah.
You've got some built-in villains in the brand story. You can be the protagonist. You can slay the antagonist. For example, you guys win the brand battle of ownership versus advocacy. You can empower physicians through ownership, and then you can create advocacy as well. I recommend that you develop, not to be taken out of context, but you develop a metric, capital freedom score, for example, just something that instantly doctors can tell, qualitative and quantitative metric, because I have some research in this. The psychographics of doctors and investments is weak. So you have to develop a quantitative and qualitative, single metric that allows them to see how far they've come, how far they will. I think that you have an opportunity to have data storytelling here, identity stories where you can convert numbers into stories. And then I recommend that you craft a category name that you own. And I don't recommend that it contains too many financial terms based on the psychographic ignorance of physicians. Physician Capital Operating Group, or something that rises above the niche bank labels. That's my advice.
Very good. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I think it's a fantastic concept, and it looks like you've made progress. Healthcare takes place between a patient and a physician, but as things are today, there's layers and layers and layers of entities just stripping value out, and there we are, altruistic and in our actions and really wanting the best for patients. We have subspecialty organizations, but it's sad, but they really keep us divided. And so this is something that could really unite across all, like you said, all geographies, all subspecialties. So I'm in, I love it.
we believe, and I appreciate you putting that, and I appreciate your support too, to Matthew's point, there's built-in villains here. And I think one of the things that should really stand out within that presentation is the fact that hospitals are doing these procedures or billing these procedures out at $60,000 and $100,000 and collecting 40. Physicians are able to do this at 16,000 and be amazingly profitable. So what's really neat about it is with all of the villains that are presented within this deal, the bar isn't set very high. We don't have to make huge changes to make positive improvements on that patient-physician relationship and increase the revenue streams for all the people that go along. So it really is something we're excited about, and the villains are large.
Yeah, I think this is
David, anything?
Sorry, no, I think this is a great concept. I agree with the other panelists in terms of uniting physicians across specialties, across geographies, and sort of just allowing people to jointly benefit sort of while they sleep, right? Everyone's always looking for some passive income, and I think this is a really neat way to do that. So great job.
David, I think if we can get a little insight of what your role is at HSS, it seems very similar to what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the managing director of a company called HS Squared, which is a company that is co-owned by HSS and its surgeons. And we serve as a consulting company, a surgeon talent management pool, and on the side we do some investment work as well. So we'll look at making investments in startup companies that are focused in the musculoskeletal health arena, given our expertise.
Excellent.
So what we hope to address, and one of the things as we've dug into this, and especially the deeper you dig into financials and everything else, what you quickly realize is the reality of healthcare is that it's really neither complex nor does it necessarily have to be expensive. If you really dig into healthcare, the complexity has been created by those that profit from the care rather than provide the care. So the old adage and what used to make physicians so good at what they did, and part of the reason they weren't taught any business, was basically keep your head down, take care of the patient. You do right by the patient and the revenue will take care of itself. And it did until it doesn't. And it doesn't now, not because the money isn't there and because it can't happen, but because others are profiteering off of that work without actually providing anything back in. So part of the premise of this is to bring the voices of physicians back together again. And instead of looking at healthcare from the revenue down, hospitals, insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, all look at revenue down, or healthcare from revenue down. VBC is a perfect example of it. It's broken. It takes a pool of money and then it starts to dispense the care from that pool of money. We believe the solution is looking at healthcare from the patient-physician relationship up. We spend $4 trillion in the United States in healthcare, providing care and whatnot. There is no reason that America can't provide the best care that there is in America for the amount of money that we have and have money left over.
Excellent. Love it. All right, everyone. That wraps up our first Pitching Startup series. And again, huge thank you to our incredible founders, PF Bancorp and OR Intelligence. Thank you for sharing not only your companies, but really what your visions are for the future of medtech. And thank you to our panelists, really, for bringing thoughtful, insightful questions and taking time out of your day. So we'll be hosting more of these pitch events soon, monthly. So stay connected with us and let's keep moving this ecosystem forward together. So thank you again for everyone for joining our call today.
Yeah, I'd like to thank all you guys. You too, Stephen. We love what Merge is doing. We love what PitchSync represents. This is all much needed stuff.